Today's chat is brought to you by, well, all of your support. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through Podbean's crowdfunding, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a patron of the FFC, please be sure to visit our website and click on the support link. Even a single dollar helps, and for those of you who are already patrons, thank you again for your generosity. You may have heard the whispers of guardians gathering in the shadows, exploring the mysteries of this world and the worlds which surround us. We are all in search of truth. Sometimes we need to focus that search, focus that fire. And so we come together. Join us. Join the discussion. Welcome to Focused Fire Chat. Welcome to Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on September 27th, 2019, over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As always, want to give a big shout out to our live chat here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us once again. This week's episode are going to be focused around exploring fallen leadership. This particular episode will serve as what we have come to call the intro session of the week's exploration. But before we go any further, let's run through a quick introduction of who we all have with us on the show. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86.
And this is the magnificent Koodalong, green-eyed music lover.
There, see, I love that you're finally embracing it, Mick
I
Koodalong.
still don't know. I don't even know what a Koodalong is. I know we went over it last week, but
I don't even know how to follow that.
It's a song. Okay, you know what? Anyways, and last but definitely not least, in the hot seat as guest co-host, we have our good friend InfestedPotato. Potato, how are you doing?
Trying to figure out what a Koodalong is, but I'm good.
Oh my gosh!
So is it okay? It's from last week's episode. It's Well, I've already pissed them off multiple times at this point. When Dingo and just being able to not pronounce any of their stuff, which is ironic because they can't pronounce half of our stuff, but it's fine. It's whatever. We do the things. It's fine.
It's fine, whatever we do the things.
Is it Dingo and the baby?
That's...
You're welcome.
So, usual introductory question for you next, Potato. Where can we find you on the internet?
You can catch me on Twitter and at InfestedPotato. I do have an Instagram, but it's not as well known. It's oh no, actually, I think I deleted that one. Never mind. Instagram doesn't exist. Yeah, I'm mainly on Twitter, and you can find me on the Discord at InfestedPotato. You can catch me in the Focus Fire or the general chat, or just message me direct.
Also, YouTube. You do have a YouTube channel.
I actually have a YouTube channel now, don't I? Oh my God,
yeah, you have some things on there that
I do have
made.
Some things
you've
that
made
I
some things.
Consistently forget about that I do. Yeah, I do have a YouTube channel. It's just called Infested Potato. Infested Potato. I did a couple of recent things. I published the lore book that you guys were so kind enough to put up in your guys' channel of Most Loyal, which is the story of Varric's post or pre-Forsaken, leading up to the prison break. I've done a fragment from Destiny 1, which is my all-time favorite one of Rasputin, kind of locking down the solar system, getting ready to fight whatever's coming. And then I have recently released, let me see if I can pull it up here and just throw it up for if you guys want to throw it in there. It's a part 2 to a little video series that I did using the Avengers theme music to kind of recap the last year of Destiny leading up to Shadowkeep. And I did it for the release of D2 leading up to Forsaken. So the first year of D2 leading to Forsaken, and now the last year of Forsaken leading into Shadowkeep. Yeah, I mean, feel free to go check it out. Leave a comment if you like it and tell me what I can do better. You know, I'll try to keep putting those things. I do have some stuff in the works, some more Rasputin lore cards and a couple of smaller Fallen ones. And
nice.
Yeah, I do.
Nice.
Thank you, Potato.
I like voices.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
and he's very.
He does
good
a really good
too.
Fallen. Yeah, really good Fallen voice.
Yeah,
really good. All sorts of voices.
When I asked what kind of topic we were going for this one. I was like, hey, do we want to do like a recap of the Hive and Rasputin and the Moon? And they're like, you're like, no, the people kind of wanted to see a Fallen thing because they're like, your Fallen stuff. I'm like, at the time I was like, I just do voices really well. I don't know anything about the Fallen. I was like, well, that changed in the last couple of weeks though. I kind of did a lot of research and put a bunch of notes together. So I am hoping to meet the standards that the community hopefully holds for me.
Yeah, I think you will. All right, Potato. So speaking of the Fallen and how you were like, hey, I don't really know much about them. What is your favorite lore story from Destiny?
My favorite lore stories from Destiny, and God, it's so hard to pick because there's a lot of good story arcs, obviously. And I'm sure if the other times people have asked me this question, I've probably given different answers, but mainly it's Rasputin. I love Rasputin. Rasputin's my man. He's always been an interesting point to me. The thought of a sentient AI and things along those lines, and anything to do with him in like the pre-Golden Age, or the Golden Age prior to the collapse, and just like what he's doing and what he's thinking and where he's going with things, and just the war that he fought. That he tried to save humanity but realized he couldn't, and he made a decision to say, I have to save myself to be able to save whatever's left. And it's usually anything involving Rasputin and his ties with like Anna Bray and the Hive and stuff like that. It's the Hive of them.
Did you notice? I can't remember if it was in the Vidoc or if it was in the recent trailer release. I think it was in the Vidoc where they were explaining like the multiple seasons coming up. Mm-hmm. And how they brought us back to Rasputin in one of those scenes because they were showing different images from the game. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that I'm hoping that that's a hint that's where we're going back to at some point during the next couple of seasons, and at least getting more of his story and what's going to happen with him, because there's so much open left.
That first time we heard him talk at the end of Warmind, it was like yes, he talking about like you can hear him say the brays, you hear him say bray. Because he doesn't know how to say it. It doesn't translate to Russian. But like, hearing that deep freaking electronic voice, and you're like this thing is unimaginably powerful, and I want to know more. I mean, and I try to emulate that in the card that I did. I can't obviously create the booming bass effect of that without blowing a few eardrums and you being actually able to understand what he's saying in the card. But hopefully I captured that.
Yeah.
And, kind of brings that to life.
Plus having some of you did a lot of that without having the voice modulation or anything like that. There was a bit of that. Yeah.
I did drop a couple of octaves on there because I cannot speak that low. I don't think
that would be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I can get pretty deep, but I can't get that electronically deep, and add a couple of effects to it and turn it around and add some things to it. But I can happily say that everything I did with Verix and Fickrel and Skolas for you with Dust was all unedited. It was all just me. So
he's Verix, your Verix voice. Anyway, so okay, yes. Now that we knew that Rasputin is your kind of thing, what got you into lore exploration and Destiny, or when and like who or why or what got you started?
I actually got started with the Destiny ghost stories, and that was when Bungie did a community highlight on them, and I found their podcast and listened to them for a long time, for when they were still making episodes. I think they just restarted making episodes. X-Ray, I think, is still making stuff on and off.
They had an episode in July. I haven't seen another one drop since, but
I was really happy to see them back, especially X-Ray and all them. It was really
and
cool
Scoopy joined them, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I listened to the episode, but it's been a while since I listened to it. And then I found them, kind of like jumped into the lore, found Bife, found Mylan, and watched a couple of their videos. And I can't remember how I found Focus Fire. I don't remember exactly what it was. I remember it was the Discord. I actually discovered what Discord was, and which I was like, how have I not known about that? Which was a aha moment. And found them, joined the Discord, and I just kind of sat in the back of the Discord. Like I was like that kid in the back of the auditorium in the back, just kind of sitting there listening. And I was like, these guys know what they're talking about. And that was when Mel and Justin, and it was like the original crew with Mel, Justin, and Blue.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was just sitting there, wow, these guys are awesome, and then they're like, hey, if you have some stuff, send them in. And that kind of built me into, writing some of those things that you guys, again, were nice enough to read live on the air. And yeah, I mean, the rest is just kind of history. I just kind of I dove headfirst into this. I hadn't dove into a lore like that since the Halo lore.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, I'm Penn's Halo, and another one of my kind.
My brother.
Yeah. And as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we talked lore. I know what class you play. We talked about it a little bit on the top 3, but that top 3 doesn't come out till Wednesday. This episode comes out Monday. So, hello, future people, by the way. For the people at home, what class do you primarily play? And why did you choose that? Because it shouldn't have been chosen, because the jump is so stupid.
Okay, I'll keep that in the back burner for later. No, I have always been and always will be at heart a warlock, and I've always enjoyed the thought of the warrior scholar, someone who can use their brain as well as their strength, and that kind of describes me. I've never been super athletic until the last it's going to be a stretch by the decade of my life. I've never really been that super athletic. And I've always been the nerd. I've always been, the dork. And I never really, I only started embracing that at a certain point in my life. And I realized I can do both. I can still be strong while at the same time be smart. And the warlock, while a lot of them seem very arrogant, I try to avoid that side of me. So I'd like to say that sometimes my mentality is more hunterish, but my actions are more warlocky. So it's kind of weird. But yeah, no, I proudly rep the warlock. I've always the trench coat inspiration from the
bathrobe.
Yeah, whatever.
Bathrobe.
Calm down. You guys wear towels as capes. Relax. But yeah, no, I've always loved that look. Like they said, oh yeah, I was inspired by the war and trench coats, and I was like, oh, I love that, or the dusters, and I was like, I've always loved that about just the aesthetic of. And don't get me wrong, I think hunters can look amazing. Like the gunslinger hunters with the knives, I love that aesthetic. And I love that vision I love that idea of the lone gunman. I absolutely love that aesthetic. And that's why my wife has a hunter. She doesn't really play it too much, so I kind of do the playing and she does the aesthetic choices.
Mm-hmm.
But I play as a 6-shooter hunter because I just love that aesthetic of the 6-shooter outlaw. That's always been a big thing. I've loved westerns, always loved westerns, and the hunter is kind of that epitome that you get to put the the pistol or the hand cannon, you get to put it on your thigh, you don't wear it at your back and stuff like that, and just the cape and the throwing of the knives and things. It's just, that's a lot of fun, and I can see why people love it. But at heart, I will always be a warlock and proud of it.
Yes, that's fine. We forgive you for it.
Yeah, you say that now until my bow finds your head.
We'll see, mister. I'll 1v1 you. I'm not afraid.
Come at me, bro.
I've been practicing with a sniper. Anyway, I actually don't have a crazy question for you because we had so many good stories and whatnot. So
yeah,
for those of you who are listening on Monday, look forward to top 3. Please listen to it because you're going to get all sorts of crazy stories from Guardian Con in that episode. So, Blue, I also didn't necessarily have.
I was about to say, I'm just going to hand it back to you. So.
I'm just saying it for the folks at home. Did not have a community question of the week because I had guests in town and Green may have forgotten, but I do have this. And he is in chat currently and he might get a little embarrassed, but Black Flag did tweet at us this evening and said, which Fallen will sit on the Plasteel throne when it is all over? Varix of House Judgment, Mythrax of House Light, Aramis of House Devils. Personally, my money is on Tanix, for he has no house, kneels before no banner, and owes allegiance to no Kel. He is a murderer. So,
he is a murderer.
Who do we think is going to sit on the Plasteel throne? We kind of discussed this in an earlier episode, and I was trying to figure out which episode it was.
Probably stolen intelligence.
Yeah, that makes that makes sense. But who do we think if you want to put money on it, not necessarily like a lore thing, but if you want to put money on it, who would you put your money on to be the Game of Thrones winner?
Blue, go ahead.
Mythrax.
I gotta think.
Really? Because
if and we'll get into this with the advanced session too.
Yeah,
but Mythrax has a really interesting history. He actually comes from a similar background to Tannix, and his exposure. Yeah, it does, and that's primarily because of his involvement with Sjur.
That's what I was gonna say. It's like Mythrax because he's friends with Sjur.
Mm-hmm. Well, but the friendship that was forged with Sjur between Mythrax and and in Varix, you see this in Varix's character as well, with his allegiance to what they refer to her as Marakel. But like Mythrax has seen both sides of the conflict that the Fallen are currently involved with, right? Aramis is the Skolas of D2, really, is kind of how I view Aramis. Tannix, Tannix really is just there because Tannix is a mercenary who is really difficult to kill. Actually, is kind of impossible to kill. Tannix actually doesn't really do well with organization, so I don't see. To be fair, I don't even see Tannix questing for the throne. I don't see Tannix even as a competitor, because I don't know if Tannix actually cares. Tannix is perfectly happy doing exactly what Tannix is doing.
That's actually how I kind of feel about Spider.
Yeah. Spider's the same. Spider has his niche, and he is, as long as you don't bug him, like as long as that's not threatened, he doesn't care.
He does like to acquire power. I will say that.
Oh, right. But he doesn't. He has his organization. Like he has his organization. He doesn't. And the thing about Spider, similar to Tannix, even similar to Varix in a way, is that they don't really. Well, Varix is kind of an oddity in this one, but they don't really seem to buy into the triumvirate of Fallen hierarchy. Like Spider definitely doesn't. Tannix obviously doesn't. Both of them have their own take. Tannix is the mercenary, the solo hunter. He's the gun for hire, and Spider is the one that has taken. We'll talk about this in the advanced session. But Spider is the one that has taken the human, what's kind of referred to as human mythology or human culture, and has turned it on its head in a way that allows him to profit and to thrive really within the Fallen culture. And it's very interesting looking at Spider as a leader, because you see a lot of parallels to our own underworld kingpins. And I think that's obviously by intent, but that's also my defense against why Spider and Tannix I don't think are interested in being the fabled Kell of Kells. Varix is trying to be, but honestly I think Mythrax is going to be. If any of them are, I would think Mythrax, because he he transcends the Fallen, the Guardian, and the human. Like he's seen all three sides.
That I want to bring up, and this is kind of one of the things I wanted to bring up in just possibly the advanced episode as well, is the fact that at this point, yes, we're talking about how they kind of want to be the Kell, but they don't have the structure to be the traditional Kell at this point that we know of. There's no Prime, there's no Archon. They would have to find people to follow him to fill those roles if they're going to be part of the traditional Fallen hierarchy. Right.
And here's the thing is, there are, but they're just currently in competition with each other. Mythrax is a good Kell. Varix has already been an Archon in his past. So we have two of the arms of the triumvirate right there. Now the problem is
they would work together.
I think Varix. I think both of them can be convinced that it would be the best if they can be convinced that it is actually in the best for the Fallen
interest,
I can totally see Mythrax and Varix working together, because we have not seen Mythrax or Varix in competition with each other directly.
We haven't even seen them talk to each other. Like, there's no connection between them, have we?
Varix mentions Mythrax in a conversation with Cade, so they know of each other. Well, Varix knows of Mythrax. We don't know if Mythrax. I would assume Mythrax knows of Varix, because most of them. Oh, he does. He does.
He's a prior wolf, so yeah.
Yeah, or he's a devil, prior devil. Mythrax in Mythrax, the card, he refers to Varix. This is prior to his softening towards humanity. He refers to him as a flesh lover. So he actually originally had a very dim view of the House Judgment. Now, we don't know if that's changed similar, because Mythrax currently is running around with a fire team of a warlock and a hunter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is that as well. Mythrax already has, for the most part, support of the Guardians. It's not official, but
at least
with them, Zero Hour, the entire importance of 0 Hour, besides the meta of Outbreak Prime, the entire importance of 0 Hour is that it was a test by Mythrax and the two Guardians that are running with him for our Guardian, to see if our Guardian was trustworthy enough to be brought into the fold of their current team. That was the entire point of Outbreak Prime, of 0 Hour.
Can I just point out that he did almost nothing in 0 Hour? He killed one Dreg, and we moved on. We never.
He killed the.
We see him at the end too.
He took out the end.
He showed up, waved his swords, and then went away.
Well, in the entry, he actually did more. Like in the entry, yeah.
I remember when we first saw, I was like, "Oh, cool, it's Mythrax." Never saw him the rest of the thing. I was like, "Ah, give me more with him. I like him." Yeah, I can agree with that, because I think Varix is desperately trying to hold the Fallen together, or hold the Elixni together, because he hates them. He wants to return to their traditions. He wants to maintain their old way of life, and I think he's going to have to let go of some of that. And I think he's going to see Mythrax, and he's going to say, okay, maybe this guy can actually lead. Because in Most Loyal, he says, nowhere else to go, no one else to be here. And he doesn't think that Mythrax, or he might not even know of, or you said he did know of him. Yeah, that's right. But he might not think,
right. But I don't know. He might not. I mean, he's not. We don't know how current. Yeah, we don't know how current up. Because I mean, again, remember, we are seeing only snippets of in-game presentation, so we don't know how current their knowledge is of each other. So they could be in competition with each other just simply because they don't know that the other has, flipped the alliance. So.
And from the sounds of it, it seems like Mythrax bringing other Elixni under his sway. I mean, not saying that he said he's founding was the House of Light, and I'm not saying he has an army or anything like that. And I think a lot of the still in either the House of Dusk, or they're just completely houseless. They're living near the Shard in the EDZ. And I think this is that slow that they're going to start talking. I mean, they're hinting at this story the same way the Dredgen story and the Dredgen and Dwindler's Ridge story at D1, it finally came to a head in D2. But I think they're now pushing that story. It's starting to come to the light. We've seen missions with Mythrax. We've seen Varix's story. We've seen, like Doom for Zombie says, he has a catch. He's not alone. You can't man a capital ship alone. And that's what a catch is. A catch is a capital class ship, and those things are big. And so he's got somebody in there helping him. It's probably at least a couple of years, because they need the servitors, or at least a servitor to help them fly, the pilot servitors. But I think Blue might be right. We're going to see Mythrax kind of come as Kel of Kells, and then Varix is probably going to be his Archon or his right hand. Yeah, his right hand or something within that house. If not, they're going to go to whoever that's who. Because I think Aramis is going to make a move against the city, and the city is going to evaporate him, and we're never going either that or he's going to get caught by what's left of the reef and get cryoed.
We will see.
Well, and if anything, Aramis might be she might be the common enemy that drives Mythrax and Varix together.
Yeah, very much so. Because isn't Aramis is going after Siva?
Right, yeah. She's obsessed with Siva right now. And then you have Varix has already expressed his distaste of Siva with the whole Septicus perfected. And then Mythrax has a connection to Siva as well now with 0 Hour. So there's a underlying ground, and Siva seems to be a reoccurring theme whenever the Fallen get brought up. So that kind of is that thematically seems to be connected there. So I can see this being another transmission issue, transmission crisis, where Aramis might release something either on purpose or inadvertently, and you could see an alliance between Varix, Mythrax, and the Guardians to put it down.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Because I see Aramis being used as that catalyst. The enemy of the enemy of my enemy brings them together.
Mm-hmm. There's a funny little story about the transmission event is when you finally figured out all of the little riddles, which I can proudly say I figured out all on my own.
Yay!
Yeah, that was fun. That whole big coded transmission that pops up is like the 103 thing. I went onto Destiny Rage Secrets on Reddit, and that place was alive trying to sort it out, and it was really funny because there was this long list of people going through binary and going through decimals and freaking decadecimals. It's like that, and finally this one guy at the bottom of the thing goes, "He's on the farm in the basement, guys." It's just they went through this whole thing, trying to decode it, and I was sitting there. Common thing, I was kind of help. I was trying to be a part of this, and then some guy goes, "Yeah, he's in the basement of the farm, guys. We found him." It's like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then everyone just, it's like, okay, but moving on. That was just a funny little side thing.
It's, exploration within the game, figuring things out before raid secrets. Although those guys are stinking fast with their stuff, but
oh yeah, those guys are incredible. I am in awe at some of the stuff that those guys do on there. I'm like, I never would have thought of looking at it at a 7-dimensional 4D analysis of this. Yeah, it was my second thing I tried. I'm like, what?
Okay, so here's what I want to do.
Okay.
I want to, once Blue's done with the housekeeping notes, I want to go into and talk about kind of the history of the Elixir here in the introduction to give people who may not know D1 lore just kind of a rundown, fairly brief considering how expansive it can be, of the different stuff in their history before we go into the advanced episode.
Yep, that's all my notes for the basic episode is basically the Fallen hierarchy.
Sweet. Blue?
Cool. All right, so let's run through standard housekeeping notes, and then we will jump right into that. Last week, we discussed various Crucible stories. If you're enjoying the show, please be sure to rate, and if you don't mind, leave us a review on iTunes or comment on the episodes on Podbean or whichever podcasting app you use to enjoy podcasts. Reviews are extremely helpful as they not only let us know what we can do better for you, but also help to continue to expand the FFC family, allowing more and more perspectives to be heard. To those of you who have already taken the time to leave us a review, thank you. As many of you are aware, Focus Fire Chat is a community in which we offer the chance to dive into lore from within various titles and mediums with a special focus on the Destiny universe. Every Friday at about 10 p.m. Central, the podcast team gets together to stream a summary of the chosen topic for that week. The hope for this is to help encourage dives into aspects of game lore within both our Discord server and within the other communities we share the digital world with. If you're a fan of lore in all its various forms, be sure to also check out thelorenetwork.com, a central hub for content that covers a wide variety of different titles and mediums. Our full show notes for each week's topic will be posted there, so for the additional information or guest details, be sure to check the site out. Next week's topic is going to be a look at the extra lore from September, Magic the Gathering. That being said, however, we still want to hear your thoughts about this week's topic. Be sure to weigh in over on the Discord, and don't be shy in tagging any of the team in the conversation. We can't wait to hear or read what your thoughts are. With all that being said, let's get back to the show.
All right. So do we want to start all the way with the whirlwind and what we learned about that as far as their history? Or how do you want to start this potato?
Well, I mean, if we're going to talk about the Fallen, I wouldn't go too deep into their history. We can. That might be into a little bit. Basically, they are an extraterrestrial race that came from an unknown point in the galaxy. They at one point were blessed by the Traveler. They called it the Great Machine, and they suffered a cataclysmic event similar to what we think is similar to our collapse. And the Traveler left them. They chased after it, kind of becoming more debauchery and more like piratey as they traveled. And eventually they formed into a hierarchy of different houses being like factions within their race. So if you wanted to look at it in a term of, different armies, or
it's
different
like feudals, feudal locations.
Feuding lords, feuding lords like medieval Europe. And so you start at the top. You have the very, very the houses. You have your Kel, which is pretty much your overall leader. It would be like your king. He is either king or queen, depending on if they're male or female, obviously. And they are in charge of everything. Most powerful. They have consumed the most ether, which is their life-sustaining substance. The more ether they take in, the bigger, the stronger they become. And being at the top of the hierarchy, they get the most ether. And then you have your servitor primes, which servitors are these machines that are basically worshipped by the Fallen because the servitors create ether and they need ether to survive. So they started making it pretty much their religion. The servitors were viewed as holy objects. They're spherical in shape, so they're kind of playing off of.
They're also the pilots of their ships.
Yep, they're the pilots of their ships. They're their technicians. They are, they do a lot of things. Anytime you see, and they're almost like they're cyber warfare. There's a lot
They're Russian nesting dolls.
Yeah, they're Russian nesting. Oh my God, I still remember that was terrifying. And then you have your Archon priests, which are pretty much they are a talking vessel between the Kel and the servitor. The Kel talks to the Archon talks to the servitor, and he conveys his wishes to the servitor. And that's how the top of the houses or the top of the organization pretty much works. After you come through that, you go down to Baron or Baronesses, which are they're like high. They're not captains, but they're higher level players within the houses. And they either are directly next to the Kel, the servitor primes, or just underneath it. They can pilot catches, they can command catches, which are their massive capital ships, or they can be in charge of a skiff crew. It kind of varies, and we haven't seen a ton of Baron or Baronesses. I think maybe we've only heard of 2 in Destiny 1. I think so far one.
We killed one on the moon pretty early on
in the Hellmouth,
and then
Cade talked about one. Was she just a captain, or was she?
No, she was a Baroness.
She was a Baroness. Okay.
Yep.
And then we ran into one recently with Aramis, who's a Baroness herself.
Right. Next and there was within the Marade, there was a lot of barons and baronesses thrown around. So within the House of Wolves, that was kind of the whole thing with Marade and Mara. So there were a lot of barons and baronesses that were going back and forth during that thing. But yeah.
Right. I can't keep track. There's 2. I looked up barons and baronesses. It was a small list.
I mean, we saw significantly more in D1 than we do in D2 at this point, but that's partially because we destroyed most of the houses in D1. It seems.
Yeah, the Fallen are not. I'll get to that once I get to the bottom of this. Here. You have the captains, which are usually I call them teleporty McTeleport because they are awful. You're shooting them and then they just bounce around. Especially Taken captains. You might as well just stop shooting.
Taking captains throwing the darkness blight. That is the worst.
Fart bubbles of justice.
They fart bubbles of what? Of justice?
Yeah, they throw those out there like Captain America.
I'm sorry. So Shattered Throne, the captain.
Oh my God.
In the first section when you're doing the labyrinth, essentially, it's just like right off to the left and up the hill. That guy is the boss of that first section. I don't care who you are. That one and the very last one that you have to kill because they're terrible.
And even untaken captains are annoying because they like to teleport and then they shoot a grapnel launcher or freaking what is it, the cannon, and it's like I hate you so much.
Scorch cannons.
That's it. Yeah. Captains are, you can almost see them as they're low ranking officers. They can command skiffs. They're in charge of in terms of our military, or at least the American military, they would be the essential the pretty much a platoon command or a platoon leader. I know captains, depending on where you are in our army, captain mean various different things, but a captain essentially there is a platoon leader. They are in charge of a group of 30 or 40, depending on how big their crew is, but they are the top dog. Next, you have Vandals / Marauders. Vandals, a little bit lower than captains, but they're higher than dregs, and they get a little bit more ether. They get a little bit more of the salvage and the scavenging, and they have wire rifles, which are the single most evil thing ever invented by the Fallen. If you ever want to shoot one, go shoot the Queenbreaker's bow. That is a wire rifle, essentially. And, prior to its nerf, it was very, very good at taking people's heads off.
In Gambit, especially.
Oh, yeah. I won't even lie. I used the heck out of that thing. And Marauders are kind of like stealth vandals. They like to stealthy. They use bladed weapons. Specifically, they like to sneak up and punch you in the face. And they like getting punched in the face, which is great. And then you have the dregs. Dregs are the lowest of the low, exactly like their name says. A lot of times their arms have been like their adjacent arms, because Fallen have 4 arms. Those 2 of those arms have been docked or taken off mechanically or surgically or violently, and that is they're the lowest of the low. They can fight their way up higher standing, and that's how the Fallen hierarchy does. You fight and you earn your place to get more. Yes, Dissolute Duck, dregs equal. I 100% agree with that. And they fight their way, and that's how you raise yourself up through the hierarchy. Or you fight and fight and fight, or you steal more, you stab somebody in the back, whatever. That's their society. It's very piratey, very down and dirty, very outlawish, which kind of fits more to their name, the Fallen. Originally, they were known as the. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's like, can we talk about docking a tiny bit and why that is an important factor of Fallen? Because we talked about the dregs, and the dregs are obviously the lowest of the lows within the society. Before you get into like the non-fleshy ones, like the Shanks and stuff like that, but docking is literally chopping off 2 of their arms, because Fallen are generally meant to have 4 arms, correct?
Yep. Correct. 4 arms, 2 legs. Spider people.
The way they can grow back their arms, that's because of the ether, right? And moving up through things.
Yeah,
moving up through the ranks.
Varix has arms. His arms were docked. I think that was after his betrayal, I can't remember how he lost his arms. I should know this.
There's prosthetics, though. He has the Vex prosthetic lookalike type things.
Yeah, he can actually use those, because in Most Loyal, he talks about crushing a shard of bone to dust with his mechanical hand. So those are usable. Yeah, but docking is kind of like a punishment, or it can be, like pretty much a punishment or a dishonorable thing. Or, it's something to say you've lost standing. It's like it's pretty much, you're now lower than a dreg. You're a docked dreg. You're even worse. Or something like that. But I think all dregs have their arms docked.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I'm not crazy. Sorry.
Yeah, because that's where docking caps come from.
I get ahead of myself.
Because they put the caps on the docking,
the docking caps.
Holes, essentially,
and that stops them from growing back.
Didn't we collect those guys?
Yep, that's a patrol in EDZ.
We're collecting caps.
It's like bottle caps, but way grosser.
And finally, we have Shanks. They are little mechanical drones, not really sentient or seem to play a role in the actual hierarchy. They're more like combat drones. They can have a sniper role. They can have a zappy McZap roll. They can have an exploding roll where they just run up next to you and make you regret. If you've ever been to which forge is it? Bogozia Forge. Is it the Bogozia Forge in the EDZ. They are everywhere. And they also make, if you're using Risk Runner, they're really easy to get because once they blow up, they give you electronic zap.
But they're kind of a pain in the butt in 0 hour when they have shields.
Yeah, they are. They are annoying to say the least.
But they really have we don't have any sort of information on if they're really a part of anything. I mean, Saber 2 is about the most expansive information we ever got on any of those guys. And those were the giant ones. That's not even like the tiny little ones that we see flying around.
Yeah, they're combat drones.
Right. They really are. They're the pit bulls. They're described as like the pit bulls of the fallen
flying
army.
war beast.
Well, right. And you would assume that then ties them into the Archons or the Splicers because they are mechanical in nature, which is going to tie them also into like the servitors. So it would make sense again that the Archons or the Splicers would be responsible for not just the upkeep, but also the generation of those particular pieces.
I also think the spider tanks, they have a little manufacturer that can produce them.
That's true.
That was and so they're I mean that just brings us into the spider walker. They're heavy artillery tanks designed by the Fallen. They have 6 legs, 4, 8 legs. I can't remember. A bunch of legs that you can shoot at, and they seem to be 6. Thank you. They seem to be completely mechanical, not piloted by any sort of Fallen that we can tell due to the electronic brain that kind of comes out when in that damage phase. It seems to be completely run by a computer or by some sort of programming. I can't confirm or deny that. That's just we've seen over the last 5 years of playing this game. They are known to be incredibly having traded shots with the guns of the city walls during the Battle of Twilight Gap and the Battle of Six Fronts. We've seen some of the guns on the walls. If you kind of walk around the tower right now, you can see some of those artillery pieces that are towards the walls. Those guys can apparently lob some shells because if you've seen the walls and you've seen those tanks, there's some pretty good distance. So if they're trading shots with the city walls, they can that shot pretty well. They can be multiple things. We've seen them with rocket launchers we've seen them with their cannons. We've seen them with flamethrowers. We've seen them the shooty arc things on top of them. They like to park them in elevators. Apparently, they like to park them inside of any sort of catch they can find because it seems to be a theme in Destiny of parking tanks inside of large spacecraft.
They show up in a lot of weird places.
I love those things. I think they're really cool. I think they're a tank. I think they're very impractical, but I think they're really cool. It's really cool.
Do you remember? You used to be able to do it a lot easier in D1, but the spider tank when you just write it.
Yep.
I still do that. Like in Berguzia, when we get to the boss, which is the spider tank, I will basically just be right next to the whole thing the whole time until the legs pop and the little brain thing gets exposed or the motherboard gets exposed and hop on top and just shotgun and Risk Runner or Recluse, whatever I'm running, and just go to town up there.
Chaos Reach with Geomag stabilizers.
Yes.
Kamehameha. Goodbye. It's just
Kamehameha dead.
Yep. I call that my little delete.
Yeah, I could see that.
And deleted. Now, but the Fallen are, I would say, on par, maybe a little bit farther than in terms of technology at our current state. I wouldn't say, I can't speak to the Golden Age, but I'd say at this time, we are on par with them in terms of technology, minus I'd say some of their weaponry is probably a little bit more advanced, and maybe their computer or AI technologies are a little more advanced. But in terms of that, they were a lot stronger than us for a long time. We have been consistently at war with them since the Dark Age. They have not been doing so well since Saint 14 and our Guardian showed up. That's to say the least. And the fall of the houses kind of do that. Turning to the houses real quick, like I said, the houses are kind of like factions or the feuding within the fallen, within the fallen's race. You have, I'll just go through the houses that we know of really fast, and I won't dive too deep into them. The Devils, House of Devils, which has pretty much been utterly annihilated with the exception of Aramis, who's trying to reform the House of Devils.
As far as we know.
As far as we know, that's, from what we've gleaned. House of Winter, they have fallen. They have pretty much disbanded entirely, and they have fallen under House Dusk, which I'll get to in a second. You have House Rain, which was mentioned, but we've never seen anyone from it, and it was destroyed apparently during the wind or the cataclysm event that brought the Elixni away from when the Traveler left. House Judgment, Varix is the last known member alive of House Judgment, and they were kind of like party within the discussions, like what if the houses were having a disagreement, the House of Judgment would make sure that they follow the correct rules of like Elixni's, their rules and their traditions and things. House of Kings, they were very, very powerful, and they were very, very secretive until their Kel was killed by Aldrin. The Kel's name was Krax, and Aldrin killed him, pretty much took control of the Kings. Kings have kind of scattered. The rest of the Kings have kind of scattered at this point and are now falling under House of Dusk. Wolves, the Wolves are either dead or imprisoned, or they're like Mythrax. They're kind of scattered. I did look it up, by the way. Mythrax was he was a prior.
Was he a wolf?
Yeah, he was a wolf.
Mm-hmm.
And we have House Light, which is Mythrax's house, which we talked about very briefly. You have I don't know if it was mentioned somewhere, House of Hope. I heard that somewhere. I don't know if it's an actual thing. It was mentioned somewhere. I don't remember who said it, but I remember hearing House of Hope. And that might have been something that was similar to Mythrax's House of Light. I think it might have just been like a translation, or like they were just kind of comparing the two. House of Exile, if you were on the moon, E1, those are those guys who are trying to constantly invade the moon with the hive. House Dusk, which is the house we run into at the start of D2, or they were there at the beginning of D2. They were the culminating of all the prior houses coming together and just trying to survive. It was out of desperation that they cast all their other banners aside and everyone fell in House Dusk.
So, Potato, I think the whole thing with House of Hope was just another name that may have been brought up, but it's not an actual established house.
Yeah, I didn't think it was. I just heard it, so I wrote it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that covers most of the known houses that we have. They didn't really go into the organizations that have kind of popped up in the last 2 years, because the Fallen themselves are in a really bad spot. They are even closer to extinction, I'd say, than we are at this point, or than the city is at this point. Mm-hmm. You know, with the failing of the Siva crisis, with Varix essentially blowing up the prison of elders and kind of claiming himself and saying, this is what we got to do, with the other Fallen and dregs that are living next to the Shard and the EDZ. The Fallen are not in a good spot, and there's little glints of hope for them in terms of like Varix and Mythrax, but yeah, it's keeping it basic. They're not doing it. They're not in a good way.
And the thing that is good to mention is that houses come and go. That is something that we know.
Like political parties.
Right. And I mean, there's houses that were established that we've heard about, House of Stone, that we've never actually seen, or because as far as we know, they're not around at this point.
I did write them down. I couldn't really find much information on them, but House Stone does exist, but we really, really, really don't. It's almost like Deep Stone Crypt. Like, we know about it, but we don't know what it is or where.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Fallen, if the Fallen are probably the closest in terms of like us races in the Destiny universe. And not in terms of like their biology or anything like that, but in terms of backstory and
experiences.
Experiences. Yeah, thank you. Experiences of where they came from. Mm-hmm. And you can totally see why they wanted to kill us, because they thought the Great Machine or the Traveler was theirs. And I'm not saying it's okay that they did that, but I'm just saying that I kind of get where they were coming from. They were PO'd, they'd been living in space. They didn't know what they were doing. they devolved, or their society essentially collapsed in on itself. We were lucky enough that the Traveler kind of stayed and hung out, and we were able to build ourselves up underneath the protection of it. And they can understand why the Fallen, like, that should have been us. Why wasn't it us?
Yep. Okay, I'm going to do a quick rundown on what we have seen of them in the game real quick, like super cliff notes. So story-wise, we know about the Whirlwind. Potato talked about that earlier. That is when the Traveler essentially left the Fallen Society and their society collapsed. Then the next thing that we really see in lore is the Reef Wars, where you have the Maraid, and you see a bunch of the Fallen heading towards Earth, and the Awoken people basically do run an intervention to help take them out. And then because of that, Mara is able to become a sort of leader to them in some respects, not necessarily in the most gentle of ways, but she has Fallen that work for her in D1 when we first visit her. That is one of the very first moments that you have where you're like, you have two Vandals next to you. What is going on, kind of thing. And you try to draw your gun and everyone, and Aldrin comes out sassy pants, and that whole thing happens. Fast forward.
I love that scene.
I know, I do too. Fast forward a while. We get to the Transmission Crisis and Siva Crisis, where the Devil Splicers happen, and the Devils get a hold of Siva, and we meet Axis, and we take out a bunch of bad guys. It's an interesting time. Iron Lords, I miss you. I love you. Please bring them back, Bungie, if you're listening. After that, we have to fast forward quite a bit, because the next major thing is the Scorn evolution with the Barons that we face in Forsaken.
Ugh.
Yep. But throughout all of that, we were slowly taking out all the hierarchies of the Fallen, starting with the very first thing we fight, major thing we fight in Destiny 1, an Archon.
Devil Archon.
Mm-hmm.
That was like very first or was it the very first gameplay trailer too, wasn't it?
I think so. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
They found the Thunderlord, and then the Archon came out of the wall, and you fought. Yeah, if I remember right.
Yeah, the Archon comes out of the wall. I do remember that, but they do go back to that old trailer and that old imagery, because we've seen that area a few different times, even in the Thunderlord mission. If you were only a Destiny 2 player and didn't play Destiny Vanilla, we go through that same wall area in the Thunderlord mission, which is kind of a fun throwback for those of us from D1. But yeah, we went through and demolished a lot of different houses. Winter was one of them we took out. Devils we took out. Who else did we? Kings eventually got taken out completely, thanks to Aldrin.
We have, I guess, Civics. I mean, he's kind of recent. He's the Spider's brother, and he was the guy responsible for raiding the Black Armor.
I forgot about that one.
I forget who the servitor was, but he was like Megazord guy in in Sins of the Past. It was the servitor prime inside of the Megazord.
Right. The annoying raid where the hardest part of the raid is the Sparrow race.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was a fun part. Just run like hell. Just
yes.
And doing it with the mini sparrows even cuter. It's really funny.
Oh, really? I've not tried it with the beep beep machine.
Oh my god, it's so tiny.
Meep.
It's so funny.
Oh gosh, what is that thing even called? Like, all I can think of is just like we're a giant guardian on it.
It looks amazing when you have a Titan with massive pauldrons on it. I couldn't stop laughing because my Bloody Mane's a Titan. It's just like the most awkward looking thing. It looks like a 250-pound freaking like weightlifter sitting on a kid's tricycle. Is what it looks like. It's amazing.
Perfect. We need what is the group that does all the music videos? We need them to do like a sparrow oriented one. Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Anyway.
They should bring back SRL and just make everyone ride mini
yes. Those things are harder to drive. Their turn radius is different.
Yeah, but they're still fun.
They are. Anyway, Blue, I think that's a pretty decent introduction to the Fallen leadership and kind of the Fallen in general for our listeners.
I think so as well. So Sweet. I think, do you want to wrap it up with some shout-outs? Let Potato lead shout-outs?
Is Potato prepared for shout-outs?
Sure! He can fake it. He can fake it till he makes it. No, shout-outs really, at this part here, for the folks that are sitting in chat or the folks that have talked with me in Discord and folks that have talked to me on Twitter or given me the follows, like the followers on Twitter. I was amazed. I got past 100 followers. I was like, you guys want to pay attention? That's okay. No, I really thank you to you guys. You guys have been a really great community that I can't praise you guys enough. And I said it in the top three too. Top three too. Good sentence. Yeah, it's a great sentence. It's like another family, it's this great community that has done amazingly for the gaming world, but for, St. Jude's and the kids, and that to me means so much that I could be a part of, and that I can collect these little collectible things, and, I can make these jokes with people, and, I can be that nerd that in everyday life people are like, oh, you kind of like that stuff. It's like, yeah, it's fascinating, it's fun. I know it's fake, but it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't get it. And so you guys are what makes it fun, and you guys are kind enough to let me come and ramble on the internets, and you guys are kind enough to go to my YouTubes or to my Twitters and read or listen to what I've written or spoken into a microphone with, and it just allows me to share that passion. And yeah, that's my shout out.
Nice.
Get all teary eyed.
Don't cry yet. We haven't even gotten to the advanced episode. You'll make your makeup run. Which, shout out to Potato for after doing his opening night for the haunt, which, by the way, is like one of the first things I ever learned about Potato is that he does haunted houses, which means I'm never going to go to his haunted house because
you said you were talking about going.
I thought about it, but also just me and scary things, it just doesn't, it's just
hide behind Julie, you'll be fine.
That's normal. I'm very small compared to my wife, but yeah, shout out for you for kind of hurrying home and kicking everybody in the tail and making them move pretty quick to get through everything and make that a successful opening night for you guys, and still being in makeup while we're recording.
Yeah, I'm getting makeup all over my my mouse. I need to clean it now. Yeah, no, it was the opening night for us there, and they were nice enough. I kind of arranged it with my bosses to say, hey, I have this prior engagement that I committed to a couple months ago, and I can't just back out at the last minute. It's very rude, and I love coming on here, guys, and talking. And they totally understood. They understood the opening night. It wasn't going to be too hectic. They had a pretty good line, some people going through, but in the next couple of weeks, we are going to ramping up, and it is going to be a very good season.
Yay!
We're excited. Yeah, it's going to be brutal. It always is. These are the busiest 2 months of my year, and every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I am getting my butt kicked every night until midnight. Some nights we don't get everyone through the house till 1 morning sometimes. But our actors are amazing, our bosses are amazing, and I'm completely off topic.
That's
Back
okay.
to green.
No, yeah. It's good. It's just like it's a passion. It's one of the many passions, and it's nice that you're able to work with them to be able to come and join us and share a little bit of your knowledge with us.
Yeah, if anyone ever has any questions about I've been doing it for quite a while. I've been a big haunted house person since I was old enough to throw a mask on and scare people off my front porch. I'm not Universal Studios level knowledgeable, but I can tell you how to run a really good haunt and tell you how to scare some people in a building with creepy stuff. So, yeah, feel free to reach out and talk to me. I love talking about that stuff.
Definitely. Blue, your turn.
Big shout out to Potato for taking the time out And, like Green, like you said, really honestly, I know schedules are what schedules are, and it's always nice when those who are in control of those schedules are cognizant of other schedules. So, yeah.
Yeah, don't expect to see me in chat for the next. So, not that I don't love you guys, but I am going to vanish.
No, you're good. We know.
In costumes.
So. Yes, definitely. All right, Blue.
All right.
How do we end this?
Until next time. Goodbye. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/focusedfirechat. Links to all our episode archives can also be found at www.focusedfirechat.com. Please be sure to email us at focusedfirechat@gmail.com with any comments or questions for our team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. Also, be sure to check out all the amazing work being featured over on thelorenetwork.com. So until next time, focus your fire, and may your light shine bright.